Prince Harry's latest visit to Britain was supposed to show that he could return without reopening every old wound. The plan appeared simple: focus on veterans, children, bereaved military families, and the charitable work that once made him one of the most popular members of the royal family. Keep the palace drama in the background. Avoid another public battle. Let the causes speak louder than the conflict. But almost as soon as the visit began, the carefully arranged message started to collapse. A dispute over accommodation, the timing of a major court judgment, questions about Meghan's absence from public events, and the secrecy surrounding Harry's meeting with King Charles all pushed the charities out of the headlines. By the end of the trip, the clearest story was not that Harry had returned to Britain. It was that the royal family now appears to have created two very different doors for him. A private family door that Charles may still be willing to open, and an official royal door that Prince William seems determined to keep closed. That distinction may define Harry's future more than any title, lawsuit, or public statement. Charles can still see his son. He can still meet his grandchildren. He can still allow a private visit to take place away from cameras and formal ceremony. None of that requires the monarchy to restore Harry to public duty. William, however, has to think about what happens when private affection is mistaken for institutional approval. A father can forgive in ways a future king may consider too risky. A family meeting can be emotional and personal, while a royal appearance carries questions about authority, security, money, commercial relationships, and public trust. Harry may want those two worlds to overlap again. The palace's behavior during this visit suggests it is trying to separate them more clearly than ever. The first sign of trouble came through the argument over where Harry would stay. Reports from his side created the impression that Buckingham Palace accommodation had been offered and that he intended to accept it. The palace then moved with unusual speed to make clear that Harry would not be staying there. That rapid correction mattered because royal households normally prefer silence, especially when dealing with internal family arrangements. They usually allow speculation to pass rather than creating a direct public contradiction. This time, however, the palace appeared unwilling to let the claim remain unchallenged. That suggests the issue was not merely whether a room was available. It was about who controlled the public story and whether the king's official residence could become part of another dispute involving Harry. According to the competing accounts, Harry's team had been working through security questions and did not confirm the accommodation within the deadline set by the palace. Palace sources reportedly believed he had declined in writing and later changed his mind after staff arrangements had already been altered. Harry's side appeared to believe the offer should still have been available because the delay was connected to unresolved security details. From the outside, both explanations could contain part of the truth. Large royal residences do not operate like hotels where a room can be opened at the last minute. Security personnel, household staff, transport routes, private entrances, and communications teams all have to be coordinated. Yet the public naturally saw a simpler picture. The king's younger son wanted to stay at Buckingham Palace, and the palace said no. The optics were awkward for everyone. Harry looked disorganized because his team announced an arrangement that palace officials immediately disputed. The palace looked cold because viewers struggled to understand how a royal household could not accommodate a member of the king's immediate family. But beneath the embarrassment sat a more serious concern. Harry's court judgment was due during the same visit. His representatives had indicated that he might respond publicly once the decision was announced. If he had stayed inside Buckingham Palace and then issued a fierce statement attacking the result, the royal residence would have become the symbolic background to his confrontation with the British legal system. That was a risk the palace may have been unwilling to accept. When Harry later described the outcome in extremely critical terms, the palace's caution became easier to understand. The issue was not whether Harry had the right to disagree with a judgment. He did. The issue was whether the king's official residence should appear connected to that disagreement. British courts operate within a constitutional system associated with the crown. A statement from the king's son condemning a legal outcome while he was living under the sovereign's roof would have created a powerful image, even if the palace had no involvement in his words. Royal communication is often shaped less by formal responsibility than by symbolism. Buckingham Palace may have decided that avoiding the image was safer than explaining it afterward. That decision, however, immediately revived one of Harry's deepest complaints, that the institution protects itself before it protects him. From his perspective, the accommodation row may have confirmed that even a practical request becomes a test of loyalty. He could argue that the palace was more concerned about avoiding embarrassment than supporting a son returning for charitable work. He could also say that the public correction humiliated him unnecessarily, because the matter could have been resolved privately. Those feelings would be understandable, yet palace officials would answer that Harry's team had already made the arrangement public. Once a claim involving Buckingham Palace entered the news, silence could have been interpreted as confirmation. The institution was forced to choose between correcting the record and accepting a story it believed was inaccurate. This cycle has repeated throughout the Sussex conflict. Harry feels that he must speak because palace silence leaves him vulnerable. The palace feels it must limit contact because Harry's public responses create new risks. Each side believes it is reacting defensively, but the other experiences that reaction as aggression. A statement intended to protect Harry's reputation appears to the palace as pressure. A palace correction intended to protect institutional neutrality appears to Harry as rejection. The result is that even a guest room becomes part of a larger struggle over control, trust, and who gets to define what happened. The visit might have remained dominated by that dispute if Harry had not met King Charles. Reports indicated that a private family meeting took place away from the most obvious royal stage. The choice of location was important. It reduced the possibility of photographers, formal arrivals, balcony images, or a carefully arranged public reunion. It also separated the meeting from William and Catherine's household. Harry could see his father without creating the impression that the entire family was participating in a royal reconciliation. That distinction protected Charles emotionally and protected William institutionally. For the king, the motivation is not difficult to understand. Whatever has happened publicly, Harry remains his son. Archie and Lilibet remain his grandchildren. Years of separation do not erase that bond. Charles may disagree with Harry's accusations, dislike the interviews, and believe the memoir caused serious damage. But a parent can carry anger and affection at the same time. The king may also be aware that time is not unlimited. Family conflicts often feel permanent until illness, age, or loss changes the meaning of every missed opportunity. A private meeting offers Charles something that an official arrangement cannot: contact without committing the monarchy to a new role for Harry. The grandchildren make the emotional calculation even more powerful. Their connection to the king is not simply a matter of public titles. It is a family relationship that has had very little opportunity to develop. A private visit could allow Charles to see them without turning their presence into a constitutional event. Yet that privacy would only work if everyone accepted that the meeting was not content, not a campaign, and not proof that the Sussexes were returning to royal life. The absence of an official photograph, therefore, may have been the most important condition of the meeting. A picture of Charles with Archie and Lilibet would be emotionally moving, but it would also carry enormous public meaning. It could be interpreted as a declaration that the Sussex family had been welcomed back. It could be used to promote a story of reconciliation before trust had actually been rebuilt. It could influence how future interviews, documentaries, business projects, and public appearances were received. Even if Harry and Meghan viewed the photograph only as a private family memory, the palace would know that once such an image entered the public domain, it could never be controlled again. This is where trust becomes more important than forgiveness. Charles may be willing to forgive emotional injuries. William may eventually be willing to reduce open hostility. But trust requires confidence about what happens after a private moment ends. Will details of the meeting appear in an American publication? Will unnamed friends describe the king's mood? Will the length of the visit become evidence that Charles supports Harry's position? Will a family photograph become part of a commercial narrative? The palace does not need to believe that Harry personally intends to exploit every moment. It only needs to believe that the Sussex media environment is difficult to control. Harry would likely see that suspicion as deeply unfair. He has repeatedly argued that palace sources also brief journalists, shape coverage, and use unnamed insiders to protect certain members of the family. He may believe he is held to a standard the institution does not apply to itself. That criticism cannot simply be dismissed. Royal reporting has always depended on relationships, background briefings, and carefully placed interpretations. If the palace wants Harry to prove that he can keep confidence, it must also ensure that hostile descriptions of him do not emerge from its own orbit after every meeting. Confidentiality cannot work when one side is expected to remain silent while the other benefits from anonymous commentary. Even so, Harry's public history makes the palace's concern predictable. His memoir included private family arguments and intimate details that relatives never expected to see published. Interviews and documentaries turned household disagreements into global entertainment. Harry has defended those choices by saying private attempts to address the problems failed. But William may see the result rather than the justification. The result is that conversations involving his wife, his children, his father, and his future role could later become public material if the relationship breaks down again. That fear explains why William's position appears harder than Charles's. The king can take emotional risks because he is trying to preserve a relationship with his son. William is preparing to inherit the consequences of any institutional compromise. He has to ask whether a temporary gesture during Charles's reign would become an expectation under his own. If Harry is allowed to appear at selected royal events, who decides which events? If he speaks afterward, whose voice does he represent? If Meghan attends, what status does she hold? If the couple continues commercial work based partly on royal identity, how does the palace prevent official appearances from increasing the value of that work? These are not questions that affection can solve. A working royal is not simply a famous family member who attends ceremonies. The role includes political neutrality, message discipline, security coordination, restrictions on commercial activity, and an expectation that the crown comes before personal branding. Harry left because he and Meghan believed the old system did not offer the independence they needed. Their reasons may have been genuine and deeply felt, but the conditions they rejected are still the conditions under which royal representation operates. The monarchy cannot create a special arrangement without explaining why Harry receives freedoms unavailable to relatives who remained inside the structure. Harry may not be asking for a complete return. The more realistic possibility is a selective public role connected to the causes where he remains effective. He could attend events for veterans, military families, injured service personnel, or children facing serious illness. He could appear during major national moments when family unity would have emotional value. He could continue living in California and avoid the daily restrictions of palace life. From his perspective, this would not be a return to the past. It would be a practical arrangement that uses his strongest abilities while respecting the independent life he has built. The problem is that this resembles the half-in, half-out model rejected when Harry and Meghan stepped away from working royal duties. The late Queen's position was that public service on behalf of the Crown could not be combined with unrestricted commercial independence. The concern was not only money, it was clarity. The public must know when a person speaks for the monarchy and when that person speaks for himself. Charities, governments, sponsors, and foreign officials must understand whether an appearance carries royal authority. If the boundaries shift according to the event, confusion becomes unavoidable. Harry might answer that the monarchy has changed since then. The number of working royals is smaller. Senior members are older. William and Catherine carry a heavy schedule while raising young children. Harry still has experience, public recognition, and a strong connection to military service. Why should the institution refuse useful support simply because the arrangement does not fit an old model? That argument has practical force. Yet William may believe accepting it would solve a staffing problem by creating a much larger trust problem. For William, the danger would not appear during a successful event. Harry knows how to speak to veterans. He can connect naturally with children and families in grief. He understands ceremony and can command public attention. The risk would appear afterward when a disagreement emerged over security, press access, seating, wording, or Meghan's participation. A limited role would still require a system for resolving conflict. If every dispute became a public narrative about palace cruelty or Sussex pressure, the monarchy would spend more time managing Harry's involvement than benefiting from it. That is why William's distance during the visit carried its own message. While Harry generated headlines around accommodation, legal matters, charity appearances, and the meeting with Charles, William and Catherine continued with their own public work. They did not visibly participate in the reunion. They did not offer a public gesture suggesting that the brothers were moving toward reconciliation. Their schedule communicated continuity. The monarchy was functioning, the Wales household was focused on duty, and Harry's visit did not alter the existing structure. Catherine's position matters as well, even if she is not at the center of the public disagreement. She has been drawn into years of comparisons, accusations, and speculation involving Meghan. Details about private interactions have been discussed publicly, and her health and family life have attracted intense attention. William is unlikely to support any arrangement that places Catherine back inside a cycle of uncertainty. He may accept that Charles wants to see Harry, while refusing to involve his own household until there is evidence that private boundaries will be respected. The Wales children make the issue even more sensitive. George, Charlotte, and Louis are growing up in a world where family disputes remain permanently searchable. William understands what it means to have childhood pain turned into public history. He may feel a responsibility to prevent another generation from becoming material in adult conflict. Any renewed official relationship with Harry would bring the households closer, and closeness creates access. Till William believes that access is safe, distance may seem like protection rather than punishment. This is why Charles cannot simply order reconciliation. A king can decide who performs official duties. He can approve invitations and control palace arrangements. He cannot command trust between two adults who no longer agree on the meaning of loyalty. If Charles forced William into a public meeting, the image might satisfy viewers for a day while making the private relationship worse. If he created a temporary royal role for Harry against William's advice, he could transfer an unstable agreement directly into the next reign. Charles therefore appears to be choosing separation rather than resolution. He can maintain a private father-son relationship while allowing the public structure to remain unchanged. Harry can visit under carefully managed conditions. The grandchildren can know their grandfather without becoming part of a royal campaign. William can continue preparing for the crown without being required to restore his brother to official life. No one receives everything they want, but the arrangement reduces immediate risk. The difficulty is that Harry may not be satisfied with private contact alone. His connection to royal service is part of his identity. When he attends the Well-Child Awards, speaks to military families, or promotes the Invictus Games, he appears to recover a version of himself that existed before the interviews and legal battles took over his public image. He is often most persuasive when the attention is on someone else. He listens, jokes, remembers details, and communicates with people who have experienced trauma. Those moments remind audiences why he once seemed naturally suited to public service. The contrast with his legal and media conflicts is dramatic. At a charity event, Harry can appear warm and purposeful. In a statement about the press or the palace, he can appear angry, defensive, and trapped in the past. Both versions may be real. The problem is that the second version repeatedly overwhelms the first. A visit intended to highlight children and veterans becomes dominated by court judgments, accommodation disputes, security arguments, and family tension. The cause receives attention, but the controversy controls the headline. This pattern is especially dangerous for Invictus. The Games remain Harry's most important public achievement. They were built from his military experience and his understanding of how sport can support wounded, injured, and sick service personnel. Participants and families have described the Games as life-changing. That value should not be reduced to a debate about Harry's reputation. Yet major events require sponsorship, government cooperation, venues, media partners, and financial confidence. When every conversation about Invictus becomes connected to Meghan's attendance, royal reconciliation, or Harry's legal battles, the competitors risk becoming secondary characters in someone else's story. The strongest response would be to place the competitors at the center and reduce every attempt to connect Invictus to palace reconciliation. Royal attendance, if it ever occurs, should be framed as support for veterans rather than approval of Harry's wider claims. Meghan's presence should not become the main story. Charles's attendance should not be treated as proof that the family conflict is over. William's absence should not be turned into evidence that he opposes the cause. Invictus can survive the royal divide only if the organization is protected from being used as a test of family loyalty. Meghan's low profile during the visit added another layer. She was reportedly connected to the private family element, but did not appear at the major public engagements where some observers had expected her. Several explanations are possible. Security concerns may have shaped the decision. A difficult reception from parts of the British public may have created unnecessary risk. The legal judgment surrounding Harry may have made the timing uncomfortable. She may simply have decided that the charities would receive more attention if Harry attended alone. No outsider can state her private motive as fact. Whatever the reason, her absence demonstrates the no-win position the couple now occupies. If Meghan appears publicly in Britain, the event can become a referendum on her popularity. Cheers, boos, clothing, facial expressions, and interactions with Harry are analyzed more closely than the cause they are supporting. If she stays away, critics say she avoids difficult moments or appears only when the publicity is favorable. Her presence overwhelms the story, while her absence becomes the story. Security complicates the calculation. Harry has consistently argued that the protection available to his family in Britain is inadequate. Bringing Meghan and the children into public view without incident could be used by critics to weaken that argument, even though one safe appearance would not prove that long-term risk does not exist. Keeping them out of public sight supports the idea that the concern is genuine, but it also prevents the family from appearing naturally during visits. The result is a private existence managed through secrecy, controlled routes, and carefully limited visibility. The palace faces a similar contradiction. It wants meetings kept private, because privacy protects trust, yet secrecy fuels speculation. When the public sees no images and receives few details, commentators fill the space with theories. Was Meghan welcomed? Did Camilla attend? Did Charles refuse a photograph? Did William object? Was the meeting warm or tense? Silence prevents direct conflict, but cannot prevent interpretation. The royal household may have concluded that speculation is still less damaging than another cycle of detailed briefings. The court defeat therefore carried meaning beyond one case. Harry has made his campaign against parts of the press a defining mission. His supporters see courage in his willingness to confront powerful institutions. They argue that wealth and status do not erase the possibility of being a victim, and that newspapers should be held accountable when they cross legal boundaries. His critics see a man who treats hostile coverage as proof of unlawful conduct, and who struggles to accept decisions that do not validate his interpretation. Both positions can contain truth. British journalism has a history of serious misconduct, and victims deserve legal protection. At the same time, not every damaging story is obtained illegally. Public figures are surrounded by acquaintances, advisors, employees, friends, opponents, and observers who may provide information. Courts must distinguish suspicion from evidence. Losing a case does not prove that all of Harry's wider concerns are false, but it does require him to accept that a specific claim did not meet the necessary legal standard. His public response matters because it reveals whether the legal campaign can ever end. Anger is understandable after a costly and personal defeat. But if every unfavorable outcome is described as corrupt, rigged, or meaningless, Harry risks appearing unable to accept any authority outside his own judgment. That perception would make palace reconciliation even harder. The monarchy cannot restore an official role to someone who may publicly challenge the institutions connected to the crown whenever a decision goes against him. This does not mean Harry must become silent about genuine wrongdoing. It means he needs to separate causes he can prove from grievances he strongly feels. Evidence, legal strategy, and measured language are more persuasive than outrage. A campaign against press misconduct can be legitimate, but it cannot become a permanent explanation for every negative headline. The more Harry presents himself as being at war with the media as a whole, the more difficult it becomes for the public to distinguish his strongest cases from his weakest. If this judgment marks the end of his largest legal battles, it could offer an opportunity. Harry could redirect attention toward work where his credibility remains strongest. Invictus, military families, children's charities, and mental health initiatives allow him to demonstrate value without requiring approval from the palace. Those causes can form an independent identity rather than a substitute royal court. The key would be allowing the work to stand without attaching every appearance to questions about Charles, William, security, or titles. The final verdict on this visit is therefore neither comeback nor collapse. It was a controlled test that exposed the limits of reconciliation. Harry demonstrated that he still has public value when he focuses on causes. Charles demonstrated that personal contact remains possible. The palace demonstrated that official boundaries will be defended quickly. William demonstrated through absence that his position has not softened in any visible way. The trip also gave Harry a choice. He can treat those limits as another injustice and begin the cycle again. Or he can accept them as the current reality and build from the one opportunity that remains. Private contact may not restore status, but it could restore something more human. A relationship with his father and a connection between the king and his grandchildren may matter more in the long term than a room at Buckingham Palace or a place in a procession. That path would be quiet, slow, and frustrating. It would produce fewer headlines. It would require Harry to leave some accusations unanswered and allow some public misunderstandings to remain uncorrected. It would require the palace to resist the temptation to portray silence as surrender. It would require William to judge new behavior rather than only old wounds. The alternative is the pattern the public already knows. Another visit, another dispute, another source war, another debate about titles, security, Meghan, photographs, and whether the brothers will ever reconcile. That pattern benefits media attention, but damages everyone involved. It turns charitable work into background scenery and family emotion into endless content. Harry still has the ability to choose a different story. His strongest moments during the visit showed that people respond when he directs attention towards service rather than grievance. Meghan can build an independent future if royal conflict stops being the most valuable part of the brand. Charles can preserve a family bond if he keeps expectations realistic. William can protect the monarchy without closing every human possibility. None of that requires a grand announcement. In fact, an announcement would probably make it less likely to succeed. The most meaningful progress may be the progress the public does not see. A call that remains private, a visit without photographs, a disagreement resolved without briefing, and a family moment that never becomes part of a campaign. For now, the palace appears willing to offer exactly that, and nothing more. Harry can return as a son, a father, and an independent charity figure. He cannot assume that returning to Britain means returning to royal duty. Charles may welcome him personally. William may continue to exclude him institutionally. Those two truths can exist at the same time. The question is whether Harry and Meghan can accept a connection that offers family without status, privacy without publicity, and service without royal authority. If they can, this visit may eventually be remembered as the first small step toward a calmer future. If they cannot, the accommodation row, the court defeat, and the unanswered questions around the family meeting will become only another chapter in the same conflict. The door is open, but it is narrow. It does not lead back to the life Harry left. It leads toward a different relationship, one without uniforms, official residences, or public proof. King Charles may be willing to walk through that door with his son. Prince William is not yet standing on the other side. Whether Harry can accept that limited beginning may decide if the family moves forward at all. Thanks for watching Palace Verdict Daily. Share your verdict in the comments. Do you believe Harry should accept a private relationship with King Charles without seeking any renewed royal role? Or do you think the monarchy should create a limited path for him to serve again? Subscribe and turn on notifications for more royal stories, palace conflict, and developments shaping the future of the crown.